Introduction to Deconstructing Witches. Crossing the realm, starting with the Sin Soldier, mastering the core system of deconstruction, and embarking on a strange journey of wizarding. Preface. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, daily updates are guaranteed at a minimum of 6,000, normal at 8,000, and even higher at 10,000. Adequate manuscript storage, continuous improvement, no leave, model author. Welcome readers to follow up. Thank you. 1. A place of suffering. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, opening remarks. People think that suffering will make them stronger, but in reality, most people will be tormented by it to the point of being unrecognizable. Weakness, disability, lingering on until death. Shoo, don't rush to take action. Let's confirm the patrol route of the guards again. Amidst the noise of the train, someone was whispering and plotting something. Li Nua's eyes were filled with darkness, and his eyelids were as heavy as pouring lead. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't lift his eyelids, let alone open his eyes and see who was whispering in his ear. What's going on? Am I not at my own home? How could there be the sound of wheels turning and strangers talking? Oh, I remember. I stayed up too late last night and fell asleep on the desk before turning off my computer. The sound of trains and conversations should be coming from the audio system. Li Nua's senses are slowly recovering. The pungent smell of inferior tobacco penetrated his nose, causing waves of itching on his nostrils. Li Nua could only silently endure the discomfort in his nose due to his body not obeying commands and unable to move his hands and feet. At the same time, the shaking sensation during train operation has also become much clearer. Li Nua could already feel the vibration when the wheels ran over the stones. These subtle details were so real that they immediately overturned Li Nua's previous speculation. Am I not at home? Li Nua was shocked in his heart. He tried to lift his eyelids again, but still couldn't open them. Thinking of the whispers he had heard before, a rather unpleasant thought came to his mind: he shouldn't have been kidnapped, right? But nowadays, taking a green train requires buying a ticket with an ID card. Which kidnapper would leave the car behind and use a train to transport people instead? Wait a moment, what did that person say just now? Can you confirm the patrol route of the guards again? Shouldn't it be a flight attendant or police officer? Also, this person speaks in a very unfamiliar language, not any language that Li Nua is familiar with, but he can easily understand it. Li Nua took a cold breath in his heart. Did he cross over? Get ready to take action. The previous speaker whispered again. Stare at the guard in front of us on the left. After he walks past us, you trip him up and I'll smash the car window. Move quickly, otherwise we'll have to get shot. The person speaking is sitting on Li Nua's left side, which is the seat by the window. When his words fell, Li Nua leaned his right hand against the aisle and heard another man's voice. Brother, wait a minute, this kid's eyes are moving, he seems to be waking up. Is the medicine you gave him enough? Shouldn't he hear our plan? Don't worry about him, he won't be able to wake up for a while. He must be dreaming. I poured all the sleeping powder I secretly brought into his water glass. This dosage allowed him to sleep all the way to the base of the Kalabo Legion, without any problems. The Kalabo Legion. Whoever is willing to go, anyway, the two of us won't go. I would rather jump off the train and fall to death than go to that kind of ghost place. Shoo, the guards are coming, prepare. The voices on both sides of the seats sank. Li Nua heard the heavy breathing of the two and the sound of footsteps getting closer and closer. Every step taken by the guards walking towards the three of them, the wooden floor would emit a tickling deformation noise. Li Nua was a bit annoyed by the sound and had to force himself to calm down, his mind spinning rapidly. What he can confirm now is, I must have traveled through it myself, and it was soul-piercing. The body he occupies is located between two people who want to jump. Headache and fatigue, inability to open eyes, these negative conditions are all caused by so-called sleeping pills. The two people who conspired to talk seem to have drugged the people on the same train because they didn't want to go to any Collabo Legion. Li Noa only felt a surge of dizziness. What should I do? If these two people fail to escape, will it affect him? Sin Soldier Leno Jarvis, lift your head up. The guard stopped by the row of seats in Reno's seat and lifted his chin with the iron rod in his hand. Sin Soldier Leno Jarvis, did you hear me? Raise your head and open your eyes. Li Noa's heart quickened and he worked hard to lift his eyelids, finally seeing the scene in front of him through a faint gap. This is an old decorated wooden carriage, with cracked wood surfaces and severe peeling of dark red paint. There is a yellow chandelier with a glass cover on the ceiling, swaying left and right as the car shakes. The faint light barely illuminated the face of the guard in front of him. This is a typical Western face, and the image is not very good. With a scruffy beard, dark yellow eyes, and a cigarette with speckled sparks in his mouth, he has yellow-brown teeth and speaks with a strong smell of smoke. What did this guy call me just now? Criminals. Li Noa's heart sank, this is not a good title. The body I occupy seems to have caused quite a bit of trouble. Sin Soldier Leno Jarvis, open your eyes and speak. The guard rudely flipped open Li Noa's eyelids with his fingers and placed his eyes under the light to observe. The eyes are lifeless, the pupil's light response is weak, and the contraction amplitude is very limited. Report. The situation of the criminal soldier Leno Jarvis is not right. The guard shouted towards the carriage leader. There is an unidentified white powder at the corner of his mouth. He seems to have been mesmerized. Bang bang bang. Several footsteps came from far to near, and several guards walked quickly from the carriage far ahead. Li Noa's breathing sounds on both sides suddenly became several times heavier. The two people attempting to jump out of the window and escape together let out a low cry. Hands on. Bang cha. The glass was smashed by a hard object, and a piercing cold wind poured into the carriage. I'm fighting with you. Ah ah. The man approaching the aisle pushed the guard in front of him unsteadily, shouting loudly. If it weren't for us brothers being betrayed by the people below, how could you have caught us? You want to send us to the Collabo Legion to be cannon fodder. I must go back and peel off that traitor's skin. The man got into a fight with the guard. The man who smashed the window anxiously shouted. The window is smashed open. Jump out of the car, jump out of the car. The front door of the carriage was knocked open by the rushing guards. Don't run. Get down. Otherwise, you'll be shot on the spot. The man who was wrestling with the guards rushed towards the front of the carriage, shouting loudly. Brother. You go. I'll give you the Empress. You've saved me so many times. Let me save you once. A suppressed sob came from the man who smashed the window in his throat. Zhaozuiyuan.com. He was about to break through the window when two gunshots abruptly brought the farce to an end. Bang. Bang. The sudden gunfire made Li Noa's eyebrows and hair tighten, and his ears kept ringing. His face seemed to be splattered with some blood droplets, warm and warm with the coldness of life passing away. Drag these two miscellaneous items to the front and do a thorough search. The guard who fired the gun spoke coldly, as if he regarded the lives of the guilty soldiers like pigs and dogs. Sir, what about the criminal soldier Leno Jarvis? The guard inspecting Leno gasped for breath. The shooting guard grabbed Li Noa's hair, made him tilt his head up, pinched his chin, and turned his cheeks left and right. It's really unlucky. The top is coming to inspect soon. The shooting guard released his palm and urged, saying. Take him to the back of the carriage and find an empty room to put him down. Lock the door and don't let him out. By the way, when the officer asks why there are fewer people here, you can say that the criminal soldier Leno Jarvis is seriously motion sick. Let's put him in the back and spit him out to avoid dirtying the carriage. Yes, sir. Li Noa felt like he was being carried on his back and slowly moving in the swaying carriage. A low curse came from behind him. Can't these criminal soldiers have some self-awareness? If they come to the border of suffering, they still want to run. Where do they want to run? This place is covered in ruins on all sides, except for the Imperial Army. They are disgusting, undead. No matter how much they can run, where else can they go? Death in a car is cheap for you. Li Noa frowned slightly as he listened. At the border of suffering, cannon fodder, undead. The situation is really a bit bad. 2. Deconstruct everything. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. After an unknown amount of time, Li Noa woke up leisurely in the narrow single room. The drowsiness in my mind quickly recedes, and my vision becomes clear and bright. Outside the window, gloomy gray clouds piled up above, dyeing the sunlight into a dilapidated gray-white. The ground is covered with collapsed ruins of stone houses and sharp-edged rocks. In the dimly lit areas beyond the reach of sunlight, stealthy black shadows silently appear and linger. Inside the carriage, the tattered green leather seats expose the yellowed cotton wool inside, the yellow light bulbs on the ceiling emitted optional dim lights, and the damp air mixed with a choking smoke smell. I have really traveled. It seems like this is a world with relatively backward technological levels. Li Noa rubbed his eyes and looked at the scene inside and outside the carriage, slowly exhaling the air that had been held in his chest for a long time. At the moment he accepted his situation, a very weak electric current appeared out of nowhere in his head, swinging back and forth between his left and right brains. A pendulum-like illusory pattern quickly formed before his eyes. Li Noa's pupils slightly dilated, causing his breathing to stagnate. The shaking amplitude of this pendulum gradually accelerated, dragging out connected shadows, ultimately forming a fan-shaped system interface. The information flow purely composed of text appears on the simple white system interface. Detected that you have completely awakened, the deconstructing core system is starting to initialize. Initialization progress 1%. 2%. Deconstruct the core. Li Noa raised his eyebrows. According to the basic law of time travel, travelers either possess cheats or have the ability to anticipate the world they reach through time travel. So the system interface that appeared in front of Li Noa did not surprise him too much. Why is it deconstructing the core system when using your own cheats? He was certain that he had not come into contact with anything called this name before crossing over. There are various game modifiers, quirky software, and more on his computer. System initialization completed, we have unlocked your exclusive skill. Deconstruction. Deconstruction technique. When you specify an item with your gaze, mind, or any part of your body, you can expend a certain amount of energy to deconstruct it. You will obtain deconstruction results related to the item. The more energy you invest, the more detailed the deconstruction results will be. This text hovers on the system interface and no additional content appears thereafter. Li Noa habitually scratched his head, feeling a bit strange. Before crossing over, in the online novels he read, almost every system would have a panel displaying host body data. But why doesn't this deconstructing core system have such a panel? Moreover, the interface of his system is bare, with no other buttons except for the introduction of deconstruction techniques. Functions such as lottery, check.in, shopping mall, etc., all of which do not appear. At first glance, the system I have acquired seems a bit too simplistic. After thinking for a while, Li Noa suddenly felt a movement in his heart. He seems to know how to activate the personal panel feature. Li Noa looked at his hands, focused his attention on the palms, and silently recited in his heart. Activate deconstruction techniques to deconstruct myself. System message. You are about to launch a deconstruction spell on yourself. It is expected to consume 1 point of energy to achieve 100% completion of the deconstruction result. Are you sure you want to proceed with deconstruction? As expected. To obtain one's personal panel, simply use deconstruction techniques on oneself. Li Noa nodded slowly and silently recited, "Confirm." At that moment, he felt like he was in a daze, as if he yawned after feeling drowsy. The field of view completed the process of transitioning from clear to blurred, and then back to clear again within 1 second. At the same time, a rapidly filling progress bar appeared on the system interface, followed by a brand new sub-interface, which was exactly the personal panel that Li Noa had been looking forward to. Name, Reno Jarvis, race, organisms, natural humans, identity 1, criminal soldier belonging to the Taboos Empire, with military intelligence everywhere, and the Kalebo mercenary core identity statement. Joined the military with a guilty conscience, performed meritorious deeds with a guilty conscience, and exchanged military achievements for legal status. After completing 3 Legion missions, you will be removed from your Sin Soldier status and granted the status of a Kalebo Mercenary Legion Private. Identity effect. You do not enjoy the citizenship rights of the Taboos Empire. When you first socialize with any character in the Taboos Empire, the initial evaluation of you by the social media is negative. But if you can showcase your charm correctly, the other person's evaluation of you will be quickly corrected. Identity 2, debtor. Your current personal debt amount is 3.11 million new sorens. This number is enough to purchase a luxurious mansion with a garden and pool on the First Avenue in the imperial capital. Or it could be in a luxurious clubhouse, living in constant drunkenness and dreaming for 2 whole years. Properties. The average value of adult men in the Taboos Empire is shown in parentheses. Resilience. 11-15. This value represents your physical fitness, which is related to your ability to resist attacks, endurance, and resistance to toxins. Dexterity. 13-16. This value represents your mobility, which is related to dodge speed, reaction speed, flexibility, etc. Spirit. 15-5. This value represents your level of mental strength, which is related to willpower, mystical acceptance, and abstract thinking ability. The illiteracy rate of the Taboos Empire was as high as 60%. You are a scholar who has read extensively and is unparalleled among all. Charm. 21-7. Before you are exposed to specific extraordinary factors, this value is only related to your personal image and temperament. The higher the value, the better or worse your impression of social media will be. The specific situation depends on your interest relationship with social partners. Energy. 14/15. Your spiritual attribute is 15 points. This means that your energy recovery rate is 15 points every 24 hours. HP cannot be measured. You are a pure organism. Your health status cannot be displayed in a data-driven manner. But your total blood volume is similar to that of an ordinary adult man, and there is nothing special about it. Soul strength. 2 points. You have absorbed the soul of the original owner, Lino Jarvis. Your soul strength is twice that of an ordinary adult. This attribute is basically useless to you until you master the method of consuming soul strength. Skills. Active skill. Deconstruction has reached its highest level. Deconstruct everything you want, and you will get the answer. Of course, the prerequisite is that your energy level is sufficient. Passive skill. None. Learning skills. Taboos Modern Mathematics, Level 5, corresponding to the graduation level of Urban College with intermediate academic qualifications. Taboos Modern Literature, Level 6, corresponding to the graduation level of Urban College with intermediate academic qualifications. Taboos Imperial History, Level 15, corresponding to the higher education graduation level of City College. Archaeology, Level 8, corresponding to the teaching assistant level of history at City College. After mastering more knowledge and skills, this panel will be updated synchronously. Li Noa looked at the personal panel from beginning to end and muttered to himself that he was truly a weak history student. The memory of the original owner is stored in his mind. As long as he sees certain keywords, a memory fragment belonging to the original owner will pop out of his mind. Just like this, when I looked at my personal panel, several memory clips automatically played back in my mind. Lee Noah has already figured out the general process of the event. The original owner had a serious job before, serving as a teaching assistant in the history major of Taboos at a city college. It is precisely because of the original owner's study and research in history that Lee Noah possesses up to level 15 skills in the history of the Taboos Empire and level 8 skills in archaeology now. As a person engaged in teaching history, he is going to become a criminal soldier in a land of suffering. What's the difference between rushing him to die? Lee Noah pressed his forehead and let out a silent sigh. In the spare time, he glanced at the debt scale on the personal panel and felt a sharp jump in the corner of his eye. Personal debt of up to 3.11 million new Soren coins. This is too sour and satisfying. Who can bear it? The father of the original owner is a distributor of a certain commercial group. He signed a super large distribution contract and needs to go to another city to explore the market. Just as he was moving with his goods and family to a new city, a tragic car accident occurred. The original owner's parents, brother, and sister all died in the car accident. Only the original owner survived because he was in a different place. The goods waiting for sale were all damaged in the car accident. Due to the distribution contract, the distributor is responsible for the damaged goods. After all the property of the original owner's parents was fully compensated to the commercial group, there is still a significant funding gap. This funding gap fell to the original owners and turned into tons of debt under the operation of the imperial debt law and other laws. That's right, in an empire called Taboos, personal debt, like personal assets, will be inherited by their immediate relatives after their death. Assets can be inherited or not inherited, but debts are subject to mandatory inheritance. The original owner's family almost all died, so this debt naturally fell on his head. Oh, no, to be precise, it should have fallen on my head, Lee Noah sighed, shaking his head in head. Speaking of which, the Taboos Empire is really a bit peculiar. It is not about shooting criminals who commit major criminal cases. For disputes arising from debt issues, there is also one's own set of handling methods. When a person is clearly unable to repay their debts, they will be forcibly deprived of their citizenship, beaten as a criminal soldier, and sent to the border of suffering as cannon fodder along with many convicted criminals. Lee Noah is now in such a situation. And in the border of suffering, this is not a good place. It is the junction of the three forces. It is located west of the western border of the Taboos Empire, south of the southern border of the Golden Federation, and east of the eastern pass of the Undead Sect. The Taboos Empire and the Golden Federation belong to the living camp, while the Undead Sect is the kingdom of the dead. Life and death are like water and fire. The collision between the two can breed intense conflict. Generally speaking, death is the ultimate destination of life. Every death of the living will strengthen the camp of the dead. Therefore, the living camp is naturally at a disadvantage when facing the dead camp. The border of suffering is like this. The Undead Sect has an absolute advantage, occupying over 80% of the border area, including large areas above ground and almost all underground caves. The living can only establish military fortresses on land, regularly clean up surrounding territories, and curb the growth and spread of the forces of the dead. In this unfamiliar land of suffering, the deconstruction technique provided by the deconstruction core system is the only thing that Lee Noah can rely on at this stage. It is necessary to plan the energy value well and not waste it on deconstructing irrelevant items. Items that can change life, bring about transformation, or acquire skills and knowledge are worth expending energy to deconstruct. So, what kind of thing can meet this standard? Lee Noah gently touched his cheek and wiped away the thoroughly dried blood. He propped his arms on the seat and adjusted from a semi-reclined position to a sitting position. A haggard young man's face was reflected on the car window glass, with a pale complexion, a high nose bridge, deep sunken eye sockets, and two sparkling ice blue eyeballs. With a tough and gentle facial contour, this male face can be considered handsome, but it is covered with a deep and lingering melancholy. Li Noa temporarily ignored this unfamiliar and familiar face. Zhaozhuyuan.com. He focused his eyes slightly and looked out at the desolate scene outside the window. Under the dim sunlight, the ruins were scattered with broken furniture, sneaky mice, broken gun barrels, and many terrifying bones and remains. All of these things can be deconstructed using deconstruction techniques, requiring energy levels ranging from 1 to tens of points. The estimated deconstruction result should be similar to a personal panel, which is an introduction to various parameters of a specific item. Looking up, thick dark clouds covered the starry sky and the sun, and Li Noa curiously silently recited, "Deconstructing the clouds." The feedback from the system exceeded his expectations. Surprisingly, clouds can also be deconstructed. System message. You are about to launch a deconstruction spell on the abnormal cloud. It is expected that for every 1000 points of energy consumed, the completion rate of the deconstruction result will increase by 1%. Are you sure you want to proceed with deconstruction? Warning, your current energy level is insufficient, and the deconstruction spell will not be able to obtain any deconstruction results. Abnormal dark clouds. Isn't this cloud layer naturally formed? Just 1% of the deconstruction completion requires 1000 points of effort. I really don't know what kind of deconstruction result will be obtained by deconstructing the Yin cloud. Li Noa frowned and began to ponder. At this moment, heavy footsteps came from the narrow corridor outside the single room. Someone stands in front of the single room door and opens the door panel by hand. The yellow-toothed guard who was smoking earlier appeared in front of Li Noa. You finally woke up, Sin Soldier Lino Jarvis. Don't be idle then, cooperate with me to record a statement. The guards entered the single room, closed the door with their hands, and locked themselves inside the room. 3-1 Residual cigarette. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, name. The guard sat opposite Li Noa and asked without looking up. On the table in front of him, lay a yellowed notebook. Lino Jarvis. Age. 21 years old. The guard swung the ink pen towards the floor, which was not smooth, and scribbled a few words on the notebook. Oh, you can already speak fluently without any confusion. It seems that severe vomiting and diarrhea have not damaged your brain. Upward vomiting and downward diarrhea. Li Noa hesitated slightly. Yes, vomiting and diarrhea. The guard glanced at Li Noa, with a hint of warning in his eyes. When anyone asks what happened in your car, you only have these few words. Do you understand? Spit up, let down. The guards on the train must be afraid that someone might bring sleeping powder onto the train and let it out. This is a sudden event with varying degrees of impact. It all depends on how the informant handles it. People under the eaves have to bow their heads, Li Noa said honestly. Yes, vomiting and diarrhea. Not bad. The guard nodded in satisfaction, grabbed the cigarette in his mouth with his fingers, flicked the ash into the ashtray on the table, and then moved back to his mouth and took a strong sip. He exhaled smoke towards the ceiling while sighing. If all the criminal soldiers were as honest as you, that would be great. We could save a lot of things. Wipe away blood, sweep away glass debris, and even fix the windows. I almost got busy with the trouble caused by those two miscellaneous things. The guard picked up his pen and wrote a few words, then sucked his cigarette and started talking to himself. As if he had taken this job of taking a confession as a rare moment of rest. Why did those two bastards think of jumping out of the window and running away? They thought they had dug a few graves in the southern capital province and sold some illegal burial materials, so they could escape from the border of suffering. They were really delusional. Li Noa saw that the other party was in a good mood and he happened to be about to inquire about some information, so he timely asked. Sir, according to what you mean, the two of them are tomb raiders. As soon as the guard heard Li Noa call him sir, his eyes lit up, and the more he looked at him, the more he pleased him. He grinned and said, "Hey, Tomb Raiders. They are much more powerful than ordinary Tomb Raiders, so they should be considered as Tomb Raiders. They have some reputation among the illegal forces in the southern capital province." The guard took a sip of his cigarette. "I'm not quite sure about the specific situation. I only know that these two people are very good at stealing tomb items from ancient tombs and never miss them. They are very proficient in the tomb mechanisms and the obscure ancient language of Taboos. If it weren't for the uneven distribution of spoils among them, which sparked internal strife, the local police wouldn't have been as easy to catch them as they are now." Li Noa narrowed his eyes slightly. He keenly sensed an unusual place. There were only 3 criminal soldiers in the carriage where he stayed before. It was him and a pair of tomb raiding brothers who died. The tomb raiders are proficient in the ancient language of Taboos. Li Noa is also like this. 3 people who are proficient in this language and have some expertise in archaeology were placed in a separate carriage to be watched over. Is this a coincidence? Or was it intentional? If it is intentional, what is the purpose of the person behind all this arrangement? Li Noa was pondering to himself as the steam train heard a whistling sound from the front, followed by the piercing noise of the brake pads coupling with the wheels. The steam train is slowing down. This journey is about to reach the final destination. Li Noa temporarily detached from his thoughts, looked up at the window, and leaned forward against the glass. The towering city wall rises on the horizon, covering a part of the cloudy sky. Behind the city wall is a stone fortress with a medieval architectural style, with flickering lights faintly visible on the exterior walls and corridors of the fortress. "All right, Sin Soldier Lino Jarvis, your grave is here." The guard closed the notebook in front of him, picked it up, and stuffed it into his pocket. "I have a good impression of you. Don't die too fast. If you are careful enough, you may still survive 3 Legion missions." The guard pressed the doorknob with one hand and extinguished the cigarette butt from his mouth with the other. He placed the cigarette with a small section of tobacco left in front of Li Noa. "Take it and hide it. This thing is the most scarce among the Collabo Legion. Remember what I said, spit it up and let it down." "Yes, sir. I understand." Li Noa watched as the other party left. He picked up the pitiful cigarette butt, shook it in the air a few times to quickly dry the saliva left by the guards, and finally hid the cigarette butt in his waistband. This should be the ceiling fee for the guards. Maybe it will also become money to buy one's life. The steam train entered the Legion fortress and slowly stopped its heavy body. Amidst the long whistle, Li Noa was escorted off the train by guards and saw his companion. That is a group of about 30 criminal soldiers, gradually descending from the far carriage ahead. Like Li Noa's situation, these guys were also sent to the border of suffering to become sinful soldiers because they violated imperial laws. But their situation is a bit different from that of Li Noa. Li Noa became a criminal soldier and went to Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com, which is completely the result of the operation of the Debt Inheritance Act and the Personal Debt Treatment Act. From beginning to end, neither Li Noa nor the original owner himself harmed anyone's personal safety through violent means. Except for him, all the criminal soldiers are thieves, robbers, and murderers, with unstable factors and aggressiveness all over their bodies. Simply shooting them would only waste the food and social resources consumed by the Empire on them. So, they will be sent to the border of suffering as cannon fodder. When the cannon fodder knows they are cannon fodder, then trouble comes. They won't just wait for death to come. A slight neglect of management and restraint can lead to riots among these dangerous individuals who explode like explosive barrels. For this reason, the Legion soldiers who came to receive the guilty soldiers used a special item to manage them. That's the electric shock collar. This hard and icy metal ring is wrapped around the neck of the criminal soldier, and any criminal soldier who dares to disobey orders will calm down in the sizzling current. Linois also has this thing on his neck. At the same time, he obtained his criminal uniform. A grey coat covered in dried blood. On the front chest and back of the coat, there is a series of numbers, which are the identification numbers of each criminal soldier, replacing their name. After all, when faced with cannon fodder that could be killed at any time, soldiers don't need to put in the effort to remember their names. Linois' criminal code is 888. 38, all the way, this is the definition in the original world before crossing. But in the unfamiliar world after crossing, 888 has no special meaning and will not bless him with brilliant success. 4. Empire Fist. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, why did you only send him alone? The soldier in charge of receiving pointed at Linois and asked the train guard who was escorting the criminal soldiers on the side. Hey buddy, you're not aware that there was a small incident on the way. The guard who recorded Linois' confession explained. Sin Soldier Lino Jarvis, oh, it should be called Sin Soldier 888 now. This guy got sick on the way and vomited and diarrhea. We had to carry him to the back carriage. The other two criminal soldiers you requested, while we were transferring criminal soldier 888, seized the opportunity to smash the window and jump off the vehicle. We killed these two deserters on the spot. So, now only Sin Soldier 888 is standing in front of you. As for the two dead Sin soldiers, they are lying on the floor of the carriage. Do you want to take their bodies back? Linois' heart twitched slightly. Sure enough, it's not a coincidence that three people with some research in archaeology appeared in the same carriage. It was specifically requested by the army where the soldier in front of him was stationed, and the guilty soldier who needed to understand archaeology was named. What are the intentions of this army? Linois is currently unknown. The soldiers responsible for receiving the guilty soldiers clearly have some doubts about what the train guards are saying. He glanced suspiciously at Linois. Sin Soldier 888, did you vomit all the way? Linois deliberately said weakly. Yes, sir. I am very seriously ill, perhaps because I am not accustomed to the local conditions. I have just improved. Those two criminal soldiers died, the soldier asked again. Linois glanced slightly at the train guard beside him, who seemed a bit nervous. Linois had some speculations in his heart, but he nodded and said. Yes, sir. When I vomited in the single room, I heard the sound of broken glass and gunshots, and also smelled the smell of blood. The soldier turned his head and stared at the train for a few seconds. Okay, one by one, I'll explain the situation to the officer. Take those two dead soldiers to the underground morgue of the fortress. The train guard seemed to breathe a sigh of relief as he took out an airtight cloth package from behind and stuffed it into the soldier's hand. Okay, I'll go handle the body and transport it to the location you specified. These are the personal belongings of those two criminal soldiers, and I'll give them to you. The train guard turned around and walked onto the carriage. The soldier touched the cloth package and felt what was inside through the fabric. Thin, long, fragrant, and refreshing treasures. The expression on the soldier's face was very complicated. He craved for nicotine due to his addiction, and felt disgusted by the train guards breaking disciplinary rules, with a hint of realization that it was indeed so. Linois saw everything in his eyes. He has always been observant and able to glimpse some hidden truths from the details. In this regard, deconstructing the core system is quite compatible with him, as they both enjoy exploring the secrets behind events or things. Having guessed the truth, it doesn't have much effect on him for the time being. He's just a criminal soldier. Can we still apply for a superior investigation? Linois wisely chose to remain silent, like an ancient tree that sees through the vicissitudes of life. Sin Soldier 888, come with me. The soldier waved his hand and gestured for Linois to follow. The two walked along the crowded cement road and passed through metal pipes spewing white steam. On the walls of each room, there are densely packed brass pipes, valves, and instrument panels. It seems that the Taboos Empire has embarked on the steam technology route. Is it really like this? No, it's not. The memory of the original owner told Lino that the technology tree of the Taboos Empire was crooked. It can be described as being crooked to Grandma's house. This is actually a country with biochemical mutations as its research focus. The biochemical giant named Imperial Fist is a weapon that the Empire has been promoting to the people as a means of defeating enemies, and it is also a backbone force in fighting against the undead sect. Public information shows that Imperial Fist is an extraordinary route developed by the military department of the Taboos Empire. Any extraordinary person who takes this extraordinary path possesses the controllable mutation ability to transform into a biochemical giant. The military department of the Empire has never publicly disclosed the threshold, mutation method, and mutation principle of this biochemical mutation route. There are no channels for ordinary people to understand the detailed situation of Imperial Fist. So, since Linoa has deconstructed the core system, can he obtain the mutation ability of the biochemical giant by deconstructing a certain soldier? Even if one cannot directly acquire mutation ability, simply obtaining the method to become a biochemical giant is still good. Linoa's gaze shifted and he locked onto a middle-aged man wearing a lieutenant uniform. The second lieutenant is walking towards the gathering place of 30 criminal soldiers, and it seems that he is the sergeant responsible for handling criminal matters. The imperial ranks from bottom to top are Private, First Class, Second Class, Corporal, Sergeant, Sergeant, Second Lieutenant, Captain. Going further up is a level that ordinary people cannot climb. Only by becoming a lieutenant can one become a first class, Imperial Fist, which is a common sense that ordinary people can also come into contact with. The soldiers walking in front of Linoa also noticed the second lieutenant. The soldier saluted the second lieutenant from a distance and then briefly introduced to Linoa. That's Lieutenant Great, a senior officer in the Legion, specifically responsible for handling emergencies and managing crime soldiers. You don't act with other crime soldiers. Your direct superior is not him either. When you arrive, someone will naturally talk to you in detail. Yes, sir. Linoa nodded, his gaze still fixed on Lieutenant Great. The appearance of the other party conforms to the image of soldiers in the Taboos Empire. Skinny silver-gray short hair, facial lines polished like blades, with a stern and rigid expression. The body, which has been modified by biochemical mutagenic drugs, is solid and strong, hidden under the straight dark green double-breasted military uniform. The bulging muscles outline an arc on the coat, like a mountain range of mountains. Just looking at the broad shoulders and thick arms of the second lieutenant, Linoa could sense that he possessed strong physical strength. Compared to his physique, the criminal soldiers are like chicks. This lieutenant has definitely undergone biochemical mutations and is truly an extraordinary person. Deconstructing this lieutenant may lead to finding a way to become the fist of the Empire. Linoa has not yet considered what kind of trouble he will encounter if he is illegally promoted to Imperial Fist. He just wants an extra life support now. If you haven't used up your energy before you die, that's really embarrassing. He focused his attention on Lieutenant Great and squinted as he silently recited. Deconstruct. System message. You are about to launch a deconstruction spell on Lieutenant Great. It is expected that every 10 points of energy consumed will increase the completion rate of the deconstruction result by 1%. Are you sure you want to proceed with deconstruction? Note. You currently have 14 points of energy, which can increase the completion rate of the deconstruction result to a maximum of 1.4%. You can deconstruct the same object multiple times. The completion rate of multiple deconstruction results will be accumulated. Each deconstruction will result in new deconstruction content. You will not repeatedly obtain the deconstruction results you have already mastered. Linoa pondered for a moment and felt that it would be better to leave some energy as a backup. He chose to expend 10 points of energy, activate deconstruction, and retain the remaining 4 points. The expected sense of confusion arrived as expected, and new text appeared on the system interface, and no one noticed what Li Noa was doing from beginning to end. System message. Deconstruct successful. The deconstruction completion of this object has been increased to 1%, due to low completion of deconstruction. You did not unlock the personal panel of the target, but you gained some knowledge from the target that he has mastered. System messages flashed by in front of me. Afterwards, a large stream of information emerged from the depths of Li Noa's mind. This information flow seems to have been systematically organized. They have eliminated useless content, retained the most valuable part, and presented it in the format that is easiest for Lino to read. The layout map of the Kalabo Legion Fortress has a content completeness of 5%. The layout diagram of the tomb passage from tombs 901 to 1121 in the Border of Suffering, with a content completeness of 13%. The liquor quotation of Heishui Liquor Industry Company has a 100% completeness of content. There is sensitive information about Imperial Fist, with a content completeness of 2%. The so-called content completeness refers to how much content has been deconstructed by Li Noa. Deconstruction can deconstruct the knowledge that the target has mastered, which is quite pleasing to Li Noa. After all, many times, knowledge is priceless, and the channels for obtaining certain knowledge themselves are also incredibly expensive. Originally, Li Noa thought that this deconstruction technique was just identification and exploration. At first glance, deconstruction is much more sophisticated than ordinary detection skills. Out of the 4 pieces of knowledge deconstructed from the second lieutenant, except for the liquor quotation, the other 3 pieces of knowledge have some effect to some extent. Li Noa directly clicked on the sensitive information of Imperial Fist in his mind and quickly read it. In just half a minute, he went to the Shuyuan website www.zhaoshuyuan.com and read through this knowledge, feeling a bit disappointed. Previously, the extraordinary individuals who became part of the Fist of the Empire route required regular injections of biochemical mutagens. Under normal circumstances, after enlistment, they become private soldiers, i.e. soldiers who receive military training. Private served for 6 months and was promoted to first class. Serve as a first-class soldier for 1 year and be promoted to a second-class soldier. Second-class soldier served for 2 years and was promoted to corporal. After becoming a corporal, inject the first dose of biochemical mutagenic agent. A corporal serves for 3 years to become a sergeant, and another 3 years to become a sergeant. During the sergeant and sergeant stages, inject the second and third injections respectively. If you are still bouncing around after 3 needles, you only need to wait for the full release of the medicinal effects of transforming the human body to master the controllable mutation ability of Empire Fist. After confirming the ability to use the Imperial Fist, he will be promoted to second lieutenant. To fully inject 3 doses of biochemical mutagenic agents, the entire injection process should last for at least 9 years. It's not something that can be accomplished overnight. It is obvious that the so-called Imperial Fist is an extraordinary route that is completely linked to military rank and military achievements. The higher the military rank, the stronger the strength. Without a military rank, there is no strength. The plan to quickly master the Fist of the Empire is no longer feasible. But the feeling of frustration did not linger too much in Li Noa's heart. He immediately devoted himself to reading other knowledge. Get in the car, Criminal Soldier 888. Be honest on the way, don't have any crooked thoughts, otherwise you will know the consequences. The soldier opened the door of a steam locomotive and stuffed Li Noa into a carriage with a metal fence, while he sat in the driver's seat. 5. Special Mission. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. The appearance of a steam locomotive is similar to a moving large black coffin. It has square iron carriages, 4 wheels wrapped in iron, and a front steam boiler emitting white steam. From the perspective of a traveler, this thing is similar to a tractor. After leaving the Kalabo Legion Fortress, the steam locomotive broke into the ruins-covered wilderness area. The carriage without vehicle suspension device follows the ups and downs of the rough ground. Li Nua grabbed the edge of the seat with his hand, which barely secured his body. The travel time of the steam locomotive was much longer than Li Nua had anticipated. It took at least 4 hours from him getting on the car to the faint glow of sunset scattered behind the dark clouds in the sky. As the sunset was about to disappear, the steam locomotive stopped at a temporary camp. Such a long journey directly exhausted Li Nua's stamina and made his footsteps weak. When he got off the car hungry and was escorted into a single tent by soldiers, there was no light left in the sky, only dark clouds slowly rolling. In a single tent, the coal lamps in the corner emit warm light. Li Nua held the plate and stuffed the mushy dinner into his mouth. "Sir," the soldier standing guard outside raised his hand and saluted the person approaching. Li Nua followed the sound and saw a soldier walking into the door curtain. Li Nua immediately put down the plate and stood up, saying, "Good evening, sir." The person took off the hat on their head, revealing a head of light golden short hair and handsome features. Although not as burly as an imperial lieutenant, their physique was also very upright and powerful. He placed his hat on the bedside table and scanned Li Nua up and down several times, as if examining or confirming his true identity. To Li Nua's surprise, the sergeant spoke in a gentle tone, unlike other soldiers who were as cold. "You're Lino Jarvis, right? A history assistant at the City College of Bervedon." "Yes, sir." Li Nua gave a bitter smile, "but that's from before." The sergeant took the initiative to extend his hand to Li Nua, as if standing in front of him was not a criminal soldier, but a true history assistant. Li Nua was somewhat flattered and quickly reached out his right hand to hold on to the other person. "Let's get to know each other officially. I'm Lorena Mars, Sergeant, and a member of the Kalebo Legion Cemetery Cleanup Unit. My responsibility is to lead the team on reconnaissance missions. I'm your current and future boss, and you're a new member of the team." Sergeant Mars shook Leno's hand tightly. "Welcome to join, Jarvis. I won't call you Sin Soldier 888. I've never been able to remember numbers, so it's better to remember names. Anyway, I'm looking forward to your performance in fighting against the undead. Don't let me down." "Good evening, Officer Mars. I am Lino Jarvis, a criminal soldier. I will obey orders and do my best." Li Nua's tone remained calm, but he let out a slight sigh in his heart. The treatment one receives is definitely vastly different from that of other criminal soldiers. His superior, Sergeant Mars, was also very easygoing and showed no signs of deliberate provocation. However, every word Sergeant Mars revealed made Li Nua's heart even heavier. As is well known, the most dangerous team in a military battle is the reconnaissance team. This is still the case when facing human enemies. How great the danger at the reconnaissance team would face if the enemy were undead. "Sit down, let's sit down and talk." Sergeant Mars sat on the chair across from the bed and continued to ask. "Jarvis, as you should know, the war between the Empire and the undead sect has been ongoing for a long time. From the downfall of the Gutarts dynasty to the rise of the new Empire, the shadow of the undead sect has been hovering over the Empire, stirring people's hearts and minds. So, how much do you know about such enemies?" Li Nua's mind suddenly conjured up many memory images, which came from the headlines of the newspaper in the city of Boverine. According to news reports, many people were executed by the local security department in accordance with the law for reading the filthy manuscripts spread by the undead sect within the Empire. Some people go crazy after reading dirty manuscripts, falling into a state of self-harm or harming others. These people were shot dead on the spot by the security police. Some people have a drastic change in temperament, becoming gloomy and sneaky, just like the weather in the border of suffering. They will secretly plan dangerous events, endangering the lives of many people. These types of people are deeply hidden in society, but they will eventually be caught by the special agents of the Imperial Intelligence Department too. Even worse, they worshipped the teachings of the dead and committed crimes in a team, causing great damage to the Empire. They privately formed an illegal force called the Suicide Society, which has always been the primary enemy of MI2. These various social events gathered together and issued a warning to Linoa. Be sure not to associate with the filthy manuscripts of the undead sect, otherwise it will inevitably attract severe torture. Linoa's gaze trembled slightly and he responded without hesitation. My understanding of the undead sect is limited to the education provided to me by the City College of Boverine, sir. Besides, whether teaching in the college or being invited by a local exploration team to identify ancient artifacts, I have never encountered any taboo reading materials. Relax, Jarvis, I believe you haven't read the teachings of the undead sect without permission. Sergeant Mars smiled. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come to see you. It's not me, an officer with military intelligence everywhere, but a special agent from the Military Intelligence Department too. Sergeant Mars reached into the inner pocket of his clothes and took out an envelope, holding it in his hand. I'm sure you're feeling confused, right? Why did you receive treatment that is clearly different from other crime soldiers? I'll give you the answer, Jarvis. On the one hand, this is because every person who masters knowledge is a precious talent of the Empire and should not be treated as cheap consumables. On the other hand, it is caused by the letter in my hand. Sergeant Mars handed the letter to Linoa, gesturing for him to open it for reading. Linoa tore open the beeswax and shook open the letter paper. As soon as he glanced at the content of the letter, his pupils suddenly shrank and he immediately closed the letter. Sir. This letter. Sergeant Mars said. Listen, Jarvis. I officially grant you the right to read the teachings of the undead sect. You don't have to worry about being interrogated by MI2. I'm not a spy suing the Deathly Society either. I now order you, as a sergeant officer in the Military Intelligence Department, to open this letter, carefully read its contents, and take note of all the words and phrases in the manuscript. Linoa instinctively swallowed his saliva. Sergeant Mars met his gaze, emphasized his tone, and said seriously. Military intelligence everywhere is the military department of the Empire's external resistance against the undead sect. Recently, military intelligence everywhere has discovered a method that may give the Empire the upper hand in this war. But the feasibility of this method remains to be verified. The military situation has developed a meticulous experimental plan for this. Find the Shuyuan website at www.zhaoshuyuan.com and you, Leno Jarvis, have been selected by the military for your knowledge. This is a special mission. Before the success of the experimental plan, all individuals and belongings related to this plan were the top secret of the Imperial Military Intelligence Department. Marston paused and his voice became low. Accept your special mission, Jarvis, it will bestow upon you unparalleled glory in future. The special mission of the Empire. This kind of thing should be very tempting for a pure man from the Tatus Empire, right? After all, no man can refuse the call of duty. But Linoa is not a local, he is a despicable outsider. No, he is an unfamiliar traveler. He didn't actually resonate much with Sergeant Mars's words in his heart. But there's no other way, who calls him a criminal soldier? Yes, sir, I have no other choice. Sergeant Mars pointed to the letter. Memorize it, I will stay here. I have to remind you that even if it's punctuation, you have to take note of it without any mistakes. Otherwise. Sergeant Mars let out a light sigh, and his voice became somewhat erratic. Otherwise, you will be torn to pieces by the evil magic of the undead sect. Even if the medical team of the Imperial Military Intelligence Department 3 is by your side, they will not be able to save you. Linoa pursed his lips tightly and lowered his head to read the letter. Now he knows why the Imperial Army needs criminal soldiers in archaeology. Such a special mission that could endanger one's life at any time can only be borne by archaeologists with cheap lives. 6. Taboos. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, there are 2 languages on the letter. One is the rune of the undead. This is the common language within the undead sect. In the rumors of the Empire, undead runes are also used as a casting language to communicate death energy and cast death-like spells. The undead rune on the letter is just a replica of the military situation everywhere, not the original text with magical effects. When Li Noa aimed the undead runes on the manuscript and released the deconstruction technique, the system only treated them as ordinary text without making any special explanations. The second language on the letter is the ancient language of Taboos. The content written in undead runes is the original text of the teachings of the undead sect. The content written in the ancient language of Taboos is a translation. Setting aside the mission carried on the letter, the quality of the text in the letter content is very high. It can be seen that the person who wrote this letter is highly skilled in the runes of the dead and the ancient language of Taboos. The only downside is that this letter was typed using a mechanical typewriter, not handwritten, and Li Noa doesn't know if the writer is male or female. Li Noa read this bilingual manuscript several times in front of Sergeant Mars, with only one thought in his heart. The content of the manuscript is filled with filthy information that tempts the living to underestimate life, despise life, and respect death. No wonder the teachings of the undead sect are regarded as taboo reading by the Empire, which can indeed cause serious mental pollution. This kind of reading material, not to mention that the indigenous people of this world find it difficult to accept, even Li Noa, an outsider, feels completely disgusted. The title of this manuscript is The Teachings of Resentment. It revolves around the theme of how humans can be liberated from resentment, forming an evil thesis that persuades the living to join the camp of the dead. Li Noa played many games, watched many movies and novels before his travels. He has seen all kinds of imaginative, magical, mystical, science fiction, and so on. This translation titled The Teachings of Resentment, although its content is not serious and can be considered as vulgar language, has only had an impact on Li Noa, who is a time traveler. The impact it brings is only similar to a vulgar online novel about a necromancer, and it cannot be considered a classic literary work. However, this is for experienced travelers. If this translated manuscript were to be widely circulated among the ordinary people of the Taboos Empire, it could potentially trigger some extremely pessimistic events. After all, the average spiritual attribute of ordinary people in the Empire is only 5 points, and their ability to combat mystical pollution is extremely limited. Don't expect them to read any good spiritual books. Their spiritual world is not as rich and colorful as Li Noa's. Reading materials with a slightly suggestive nature and internal logic may lead the imperial people's thinking astray. No wonder the Empire has always made it a top priority to eliminate the filth of the undead sect. Li Noa shook his head, cleared his mind of distractions, and focused on reciting the translated manuscript. Hey! No, I don't need to personally memorize the content above, do I? Li Noa muttered to himself and cast a deconstruction spell on the manuscript. The system prompts him that he only needs to expend a little energy to fully deconstruct the manuscript. Li Noa now has 4 points of energy on hand, which is quite sufficient. He directly mobilized a bit of energy to deconstruct the translated manuscript. After a brief moment of confusion, the system sent feedback messages as scheduled. System message: Deconstruct successful. The deconstruction completion of the original and translated texts of The Teachings of Resentment has reached 100%. You have achieved the following deconstruction results. 1. The system has recorded the manuscript in your mind. You can check and search it at any time. As a result, you have gained a new learning skill. Death Rune Literature, currently at level 1. Based on your knowledge of Taboos history and archaeology, you have deconstructed 3 translation errors from this manuscript, and the system has marked the error points for you. Li Noa looked at the system message and raised his eyebrows. The gains from deconstructing the manuscript were greater than he expected. Firstly, after deconstructing the manuscript 100%, it will be included in the mind. Whether it is the original text written in the rune of the undead or the translation in the ancient language of Taboos, it is the same. The actual effect of this deconstruction achievement is much better than that of Li Noa personally memorizing the entire manuscript. Every letter, punctuation mark, and crooked talisman on the manuscript were deeply engraved in his mind, as if they would never fade away with time. Li Noa now only needs to move his mind, and the manuscript will appear in front of him, completely eliminating the effort of personally memorizing the manuscript. In addition, the system also marked the translation errors on the manuscript, saving him the effort of personally proofreading. At this moment, Li Noa had to celebrate one thing. If he hadn't deconstructed the core system by hand, the hard work of memorizing and correcting errors would probably have left him up late at night, which was very torturous. Li Noa stared at the mistake and pondered for 2 seconds, then looked up at Sergeant Mars. "Sir, I would like to report something." Sergeant Mars was holding a marching iron pot the size of a palm in his hand, slowly drinking water. As soon as he heard Li Noa's words, he immediately twisted on the lid of the pot and became serious. "What's up, Jarvis? I have found 3 errors in the translation. Of course, I cannot rule out that it was a misunderstanding caused by my lack of knowledge. If possible, I would like to ask you to send a letter to the author of the manuscript, asking him to verify the original text and translation on the letter again. Is there a translation error?" "I don't think so." Sergeant Mars seemed to know the author of the manuscript, his tone wavering slightly. "Mark the wrong place with a pencil. I'll go ask now." "Yes, sir." Li Noa took a pencil from the bedside table and quickly drew 3 circles on the letter. Sergeant Mars advised Lino not to move and then left with the folded letter. In about 3 minutes, Sergeant Mars returned from outside. He walked into the tent and immediately threw an admiring gaze at Li Noa, with a hint of admiration. "You truly deserve to be the top student in the city of Burbaton. No wonder you can become a college assistant at a young age. There are indeed translation errors in the 3 places you pointed out. I have brought you the reply from the letter writer." Sergeant Mars handed the letter to Lino. "Come and take a look, she wrote some words for you." "She?" Li Noa raised his eyebrows lightly, not expecting that the researcher studying necromancy literature would be a woman. Sergeant Mars didn't give much introduction and waved his hand to expose the topic. Obviously, due to military orders and confidentiality requirements, he couldn't say more. Li Noa opened the letter paper. Next to the 3 errors he marked, there were 3 large sections of manually written text added. The main idea is to express apologies for one's negligence in work and affirm the knowledge and literacy of Criminal Soldier 888. These 3 paragraphs are written elegantly, with no traces of ink modification from beginning to end. It appears to be written by a capable woman. Li Noa pondered for half a second, feeling a bit curious in his heart. If deconstruction techniques are used to target handwritten handwriting, what results would he get if he went to Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com? Directly obtain the personal information of the writer. Isn't this deconstruction technique too powerful? It can be considered a great weapon for tracking and killing enemies, and investigating mysterious cases. Do as you please. Activate deconstruction technique. Deconstruct these 3 handwritten characters. System message. You are about to launch a deconstruction technique on handwritten handwriting. It is predicted to consume 2 energy points, which can increase the completion rate of deconstruction to 100%. You currently have 3 energy points. Are you sure you want to deconstruct? Just 2 energy points, I can afford it. Let me see who the writer is. Confirm and deconstruct. After a brief moment of confusion, Li Noa obtained the deconstruction result. System message. Deconstruct successful. The completion rate of deconstruction has been increased to 100%. You have obtained the following information. 1. The age of the writer is about 19 years old, female, right-handed, with a height of about 1.70 to 1.77 meters, normal body shape, slightly plump. 2. the system predicts that a 100% deconstruction writer will require 3,000 energy points. Li Noa nodded to himself. I have encountered a lieutenant or captain hiding behind the scenes, and I am also a young woman with extraordinary abilities who can stand firm in a military filled with men alone. At the age of 19, this unnamed woman is expected to have a remarkable background in achieving such success. But the words came back. Are you serious about deconstructing the core system? How did you deconstruct the handwriting and know that she was tall and slightly plump? Speaking, the system. 7. Biochemical bait. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, the next morning. The alternation of day and night in the border of suffering is not very obvious. The sky at the beginning of the sun's rise is similar to the dark moment before dawn, except that the dark clouds in the sky are clearer. Li Noa pretended to recite the translation last night and didn't fall asleep until late at night amidst the yawning of Sergeant Mars. He dreamed that he had caught a succubus, the kind of Japanese one. He accumulated a lot of energy and used it all to deconstruct the demon. Just as he was about to receive the mysterious potion from the succubus, the loud whistle in the camp shattered his beautiful dream. Li Noa could only force himself to get up and wear clothes, with 2 panda eyes on his head, and eat hard noodles for breakfast. Sergeant Mars lifted the door curtain and walked in, placing a relatively clean bag of clothes on Li Noa's bedside table. After finishing your meal, quickly put on this set of armed clothes. They can provide some necessary protection and are much more reliable than your criminal uniform. Move faster, we are about to leave. Yes, sir, Li Noa asked. Where are we going? Sergeant Mars moved to the chair and sat down. He pulled out a cigarette and placed it in front of his nose to smell it, but did not light it. We're going to war, fighting against the undead army. The battle location is Tomb 1079. Hey, I've been to that place twice before. It's a 3-story underground tomb, and each floor is so big that it's deadly. This battle must last another whole day. Li Noa nodded silently, glanced at the cigarette in the other person's hand, and then lowered his head again to nibble on the bread. What should come always comes, it's just that I didn't expect it to be so fast. Ah yes. This sentence is a pun. Jarvis, let me remind you. Sergeant Mars leaned forward and solemnly said. In our army, only Sergeant Alvin and I, the military commander, know about the experimental plans of the military situation. Only we know your identity. There is also a tall and slightly plump 19-year-old girl who knows my identity and mission. Li Noa interjected a sentence in his heart. Sergeant Mars didn't know what Li Noa was thinking, so he continued. You are about to take action with my team. My team members are not aware of your special mission and will only treat you as an ordinary criminal. Do you understand what I say? They will be a bit, well, rude and don't take you seriously. I hope you don't take it to heart. When you achieve your mission, you will naturally gain their respect. Additionally, I will try my best to take care of you during the battle and won't let you die for no reason. Thank you, sir. Li Noa nodded heartily. After dinner, change your clothes and the army will be deployed. Li Noa met the squad members of Sergeant Mars, who were 5 second-class soldiers and 1 corporal. As Sergeant Mars said, the team members didn't give Leno a good face. But they still couldn't help but glance at Li Noa a few times, attracted by his handsome face that was 3 times as handsome as an ordinary person. Aha, this damn charm. It's like a man and woman killing each other. This should be considered the most useful thing in the inheritance left by the original owner. Tomb 1079 is located 2 kilometers west of the campsite. It has a grand entrance to the tomb, full of historical relics. This entrance is composed of a stone arch made of square stone bricks, supplemented by a large number of mysterious carved tiles and walls. After entering this gloomy place, the light instantly dimmed for a few minutes. The outdoor sunlight is like being blocked by an invisible barrier, unable to shine into the area inside the door. The light emitted by the coal lamp was also compressed and flattened by mysterious and unpredictable forces at the same time, reducing its brightness from being able to illuminate a radius of 10 meters to only illuminating a range of 5 or 6 meters around it. If Lee Noah were an expert in the field of mysticism, he would definitely be able to make some comments on this strange optical phenomenon. But unfortunately, he is not. He could only move slowly along with the team like a stunned youth, under the supervision of soldiers. Imperial soldiers have a variety of weapons and equipment. Short tube silencing rifles loaded with silencing bullets, box-style flamethrowers carried on the shoulder, sharp serrated knives, multi-purpose engineering hammers, armor for blocking sharp and blunt weapons, filter-can breathing masks for blocking toxic gases, and so on. Lee Noah can understand these things and also understand their purpose. But what is that kind of bug that must be swallowed in one breath? This type of insect has an appearance similar to a caterpillar, with slender antennae covering its entire body, presenting a dark green color. Wrap it in your mouth, swallow it all into your stomach, and then you can feel the thrusting of your stomach. Many tiny green bumps, like goosebumps, quickly appear on the surface of your skin. The soldiers each swallowed a bug like this. But Lee Noah was forced to swallow as many as 5, with 5 rows of green protrusions protruding from his arms. There is one thing worth mentioning. There are not only Lee Noah, a criminal soldier, but also 3 other criminal soldiers in the army. These 3 people looked at each other, and Lee Noah was not quite sure if they had taken the train yesterday. The Imperial Army entered the deep above-ground area of the tomb. It's quiet here, and you can't see the so-called undead. In a spacious hall, Sergeant Alvin led his army to take a brief rest. There are many reliefs on the walls of the hall, creating a surreal picture. The relief has been destroyed by soldiers who arrived here in the past, covered in scratches, chisels, and traces of fire, making it difficult to see the content of the relief. On the ceiling of the hall hangs a chandelier that is spraying white mist, which is a gas purification device for purifying the air inside the tomb. Its gas delivery pipeline is arranged along the ceiling and walls, extending from the chandelier to the corner of the wall, connected to 3 cylindrical iron cans at the corner. These 3 iron cans contain the reactants needed to produce gas. It is precisely because of the presence of this white mist that the air quality in the cemetery area is relatively good and can be directly inhaled into the body. But near the stairwell, it is evident that yellow-green toxic gases are constantly surging up from below, blending with the white mist and attacking each other, like 2 opposing sides engaged in battle. Sergeant Alvin arranged for engineers to inspect the gas purification device, and at the same time, he pulled out a wave of manpower and asked them to go to the tomb passage on the underground floor to inquire about the situation there at the book garden www.zhaoshuyuan.com. At this point, it was the reconnaissance team's turn to appear. There are a total of 4 reconnaissance teams in the army, with 3 criminal soldiers. Including the new Lee Noah, there are a total of 4 criminal soldiers listed. Lee Noah and 3 other criminal soldiers were assigned to 4 reconnaissance teams, becoming the true vanguard. These 4 reconnaissance teams will travel from the 4 stairwells to the underground level of the tomb. Now, their departure is imminent. Sin Soldier 888, you're walking at the front. A second-class soldier used the barrel of his gun to thrust Lee Noah's waist and forcefully pushed him forward. Be honest, don't think about running away. We'll keep an eye on you. If you don't want to die, don't get out of our sight, otherwise the undead creatures attracted by the biochemical bait will take your life. Lee Noah touched his sore waist and looked at Sergeant Mars with calm eyes. He turned his head and asked the soldier who had just pushed him. Biochemical bait. What is that? The second class explained impatiently. It's the rows of protrusions on your arms that emit a seductive odor, allowing slow-reacting undead creatures to wake up faster and expose their existence. Linoa's eyebrows twitched as he listened to these words. In this reconnaissance mission, the daring crime soldiers played the role of bait, specifically responsible for attracting the attention of undead creatures. The second-class soldier, who was speaking, raised his face and chin forward. Don't ask so many questions, you are just an optional sin soldier. If it weren't for the mercy of imperial law, you wouldn't have had the chance to join the sacred cause of clearing undead creatures. Now, do your job well. 8. Raid by the deceased. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. Although criminal soldiers are used to explore, they still have basic survival guarantees. Among the combat equipment that Sergeant Mars brought to Lino was a breathing mask with a filter canister. After putting this thing on your head, you can only observe the surrounding environment through two thick glass lenses, and you can also hear your own breathing, which can easily cause tension in your life. Linoa used to only see this thing in works with war or zombie themes, but now it's the first time he's wearing it. To be honest, his curiosity about the dead is more than anxiety in his heart, at least so far. This is a psychological state unique to the traveler. They naturally believe that they will survive and become legendary figures because they have traveled through time and have a system around them. Before truly facing the threat of death, they will approach their journey of travel with a playful attitude towards life. Linoa thought he was already cautious enough, much more careful than ordinary travelers, but deep down in his heart, he knew very well that he would turn danger into safety. So, as he stepped into the stairwell leading to the underground area, there was to some extent a slackness in his heart that had arisen from curiosity about undead creatures. Quickly, due to a small accident, he put aside his inappropriate attitude and became completely serious, taking his first employment task seriously. This accident came from a sinister undead creature. It lurks on the walls of the stairwell. It has an appearance that is no different from ordinary stone walls. No matter how it looks like an ordinary stone brick. But when Linoa, emitting the scent of biochemical bait, approached the stone brick, about 10 meters away, a black shadow shot out from inside the stone brick. At this moment, Linoa had no resistance at all. He used the light of a coal lamp to spot the oncoming black shadow, but because he had not received military training, he was unable to control his body in time and made evasive movements. I saw it, but couldn't avoid it. Linoa's eyebrows twitched fiercely, as if he had foreseen the tragic situation of being pierced by a black shadow on his head. Fortunately, Sergeant Mars kept his promise and quickly reacted to the dark shadow, saving the slow-moving Linoa. A yellow bullet was fired from a short-barreled rifle equipped with a silencer, accurately landing on the stone brick that emitted a black shadow, exploding into blood splatters with purple-black sewage. A large black and filthy mass of flesh and blood fell from the wall, turning into a puddle of mud mixed with bones and fur. At the same time, the dark shadow that was about to fall on Linoa's face completed the entire process from Giant Heart to Microsoft, and then from Microsoft to Panasonic in just half a second, and fell to the ground with a snap. Linoa slowly exhaled the air trapped in his chest and instinctively lifted his hand to wipe the cold sweat from his forehead. He just realized that the breathing mask was blocking his palm, and he could only let sweat fall from his cheeks. Thank you. Linoa turned around and nodded to Sergeant Mars, who had helped. Sergeant Mars deliberately pretended to be cold and responded with an almost invisible nod. He walked forward, crossed over Linoa, picked up the black shadow on the ground with the tip of his gun, and placed it under the light of the coal lamp to scrutinize. The true face of the black shadow caught Linoa's eye as Sergeant Mars moved. That is a tentacle covered in tiny black hair. The tentacles are connected to the mud that falls on the ground, and the tip is a flower-shaped mouthpiece with sharp teeth. It can be imagined that if Sergeant Mars were to shoot at night for 1/3 of a second, the mouthparts of the black-haired tentacles would cover Linoa's face. What is this? Linoa asked in a low voice. Sergeant Mars shook his rifle, shook his black hair tentacles to the ground, glanced at Leno, and said. The underground lurker is a low-level stitch monster of the undead sect that disguises itself as stone bricks and hides on walls, waiting for an opportunity to launch a surprise attack. It smells the scent of biochemical bait, so it will immediately launch a surprise attack as soon as you step into its attack range. Sergeant Mars returned to the queue and had a brief conversation with several others, but did not avoid the infamous soldiers. Linua stood silently listening, gradually realizing how rich the combat experience of the Imperial Army was. They actually inferred the general situation of the underground tomb based solely on the remains of a dead creature. The corporal in the team said, "The burrow lurker we encountered has a total length of about 3 meters antennae, and the flagella on the antennae are short and hard, with a length of about 6 millimeters. I believe this is a mature burrow lurker with vertical diffusion ability." Another soldier took out the layout plan of the tomb and placed it under the light of a coal lamp. Sergeant Mars gestured a few times on the map and expressed his speculation. The vertical movement speed of mature cave lurkers is 10 meters per second, and they can swim quickly in hard stone bricks and walls. Lingshu usually takes 2 months to summon a large number of underground lurkers at this level. We are located at a depth of 2 meters underground, with a vertical distance of approximately 100 meters between the tomb passage on the 3rd floor underground of the tomb. Preliminary estimates suggest that there are a large number of mature undead creatures in the tombs of the 2nd and 3rd underground floors, which have been present for at least 2 months. This is not good news. Yes. Even worse, to revive such a large number of mature undead creatures, at least a level 2 spiritual pivot is necessary. Mars' summary speech. We need more intelligence to pinpoint the exact level of the spiritual pivot. So keep moving forward, everyone, let's pave the way for the Imperial Army. For the glory of the Empire. A group of team members responded with low growls. For the glory of the Empire. The soldiers stopped communicating and turned their gaze to Linua. Linua cleverly did not hesitate, and obediently walked slowly down the stairs at his feet. This time he took things seriously a lot, completely calmed down the emotions he shouldn't have, and devoted himself wholeheartedly to observing the surrounding environment. As he walked, he suddenly discovered a clever trick to use deconstruction. When the deconstruction technique is activated, the system will give the target object a name. For example, the dark clouds in the sky at the junction of suffering. Linua thought this was an ordinary cloud layer, but the system directly labeled it as abnormal, reminding the host that there was an abnormality in this cloud layer. Linua can take advantage of this and find the Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com to discover the underground lurkers disguised as stone bricks in advance. He walked and lost deconstruction techniques all the way, but did not use any energy to deconstruct, just obtaining the name of the target object from the system. This method is very useful. Within 5 minutes of encountering the first underground lurker, he discovered 6 sneaky underground lurkers through this method. Despite being aware of the existence of the attackers in advance, Linua did not make any outrageous moves. He doesn't want to expose his ability to detect underground lurkers. He did not take any preventive measures to avoid the underground lurkers, but instead, at the moment when the underground lurkers launched a surprise attack, he quickly crouched down with his head hugged, protecting his head, and making room for the soldiers behind him to shoot. This set of cowardly dodge movements looks a bit awkward. Linua can't handle so much anymore. It's important to survive, and everything about appearance should be sidelined. I can't always expect Sergeant Mars to shoot without fail. Right. The soldiers didn't say much and gradually got used to this criminal soldier who would crouch down with his head hugged whenever there was a disturbance. Sergeant Mars noticed Linua's actions and his gaze flickered faintly. People say that scholars in urban colleges dress politely and are highly respected, but each one of them is very timid, and when they encounter danger, they will freeze in place like fools. Isn't Lino Jarvis performing quite well? Well. Although the squatting motion with your head hugged may seem a bit silly, it's always better than daydreaming. Sergeant Mars nodded silently, relieved to see that Lino was so adaptable. After all, the next investigation work will not be as simple as it is now. 9. The Gaze of the Deceased. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, at the end of the staircase is a handmade metal gate. This door cuts off the road between the stairwell and the basement level. In an ideal scenario, a metal gate would isolate the air flow inside and outside the door, sealing off the toxic gas emitted by undead creatures in the tomb passage of an underground tomb. But now, corrosion marks have appeared on this metal gate. There are numerous tassel-like corrosion patterns at the door seams and hinges. The faint yellow-green poison gas is emerging from these damaged areas and flowing upwards along the corridor of the staircase. Sergeant Mars lifted the coal lamp and shone it on the door panel. A faint but somewhat dazzling light is reflected from the corroded area. The corrosion is very smooth and free of burrs. It should have appeared in the past decade or so. Sergeant Mars muttered words in his mouth. He turned his head and looked at the corporal behind him. When was the last time this door was repaired? The corporal took out a diary and flipped through a few pages to find the exact date. Sir, the last maintenance was 21 days ago. Sergeant Mars nodded thoughtfully. Well, that means, just a few days after we finished repairing it, this door was corroded by the poisonous mist behind it. It seems that there are quite a few undead on the underground floor. He took out the key to the metal gate, inserted it into the lock hole to unlock the buckle, and then grabbed the door handle with both hands. Guys, get ready, I'm going to open the metal gate. Crime Soldier 888, come and help me open the door. Remember, after opening the door, you can't retreat without my permission. No matter what happens, you can only continue to move forward or stand in place. Yes, sir. Linoa held the door handle, his heart beating slightly faster. He had a bad premonition that the scene behind the door might be somewhat unexpected. The heavy metal gate was opened by the soldiers working together. Linoa had a coal lamp stuffed into his hand by soldiers. Under the urging of the soldiers' gaze, he stepped into a dark space without any light. As soon as I stepped into the underground tomb passage, the light of the coal lamp was further compressed. Linoa fiddled with the dial that adjusted the brightness and then shook his head helplessly. This ghost place seems to be rejecting light. Even if he adjusted the brightness of the coal lamp to its maximum, the light could only hover within 1 meter of the surrounding space. Linoa can only move forward under almost dark conditions. The cold and gloomy atmosphere in the air became strong, and a rolling chill penetrated into the uniform of the criminal soldier, swimming against Linoa's skin, causing him to shiver. This is a cold silence that can penetrate through protective gear and body, directly affecting the soul, as cold as taking away all hope and vitality from the living. Linoa gritted his teeth and walked forward with a stiff face. From the moment he stepped into the metal gate, his deconstruction technique never ceased. He couldn't see clearly in the darkness and could only rely on feedback from the system to determine what he had passed by. System message. You are about to launch a deconstruction spell on ancient floor tiles. System message. You are about to launch a deconstruction spell on the old wall lamp. System message. You are about to launch a deconstruction spell on the resurrected skeleton. Wait, the revived bones. Linoa stopped and listened attentively. A few meters ahead, there was a very faint movement coming. Clack 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 clack. System message. You are about to launch a deconstruction spell on an undead creature with an unknown name. A undead creature has appeared, where is it? Linoa opened his eyes wide, raised the coal lamp in his hand, and stretched his arms as straight as possible to let the light shine further away. Sleeping slot, what is this thing? Linoa froze all over, his eyes staring blankly. I saw a large skeleton frame slowly standing up from the floor filled with bones. The height of this skeleton frame is at least 4 meters, like a towering bone sculpture. When it stood up, the white stone powder slid off its body, revealing the scarred surface of its bones. The light of the coal lamp shone on the skull frame's forehead, reflecting an incredibly cold light. Linoa couldn't help but tremble. In the skull of this skeleton, a purple light cluster lit up, as if suggesting that the undead creature was awakening from slumber. The brightness of the light cluster is much lower than that of the coal lamp. It seems that it will take some time for this monster to fully wake up. However, Linoa could already feel the other person's gaze. This large skull is staring at him. Linoa forced himself to calm down. He turned around to look in the direction of the door. Sergeant Mars and others were staring at the enemy with a serious expression and did not issue an order for Lino to retreat. One of them saw Linoa shrink a bit and shouted. "Stand still. That's the big skull, a low-level undead construct." The short-barreled rifles in the soldiers' hands seemed to be pointing at undead creatures, as if they were aiming at the back of the criminal soldiers. Seeing this picture, Linoa knew that his most difficult moment had arrived. Understanding the number and composition of enemies is the role of the reconnaissance team. For this, soldiers must use the biochemical bait on the criminal soldiers to awaken the undead creatures in the underground layer of the tomb as much as possible. This large skull, which is over 4 meters tall, is just one of the first group of undead creatures to recover. It is far from enough to meet the standards of understanding enemy forces when searching for books on www.xiaozuiyuan.com. Soldiers must wait until more and more undead creatures are revived before they can estimate the total number of enemy forces on the underground level. Only then will the guilty soldiers be allowed to retreat. Rather than relying on Sergeant Mars ordering a retreat in advance, it is better to turn the tide on one's own abilities. After quick reflection, Linoa found 2 solutions. The first plan. Solve the odor emission problem of biochemical bait. As long as the biochemical bait does not emit an odor, the number of resurrected undead creatures will continue to decrease, and the chance of survival will increase. But this will make the awakening of undead creatures less than expected, attracting soldiers for review. Sergeant Mars may also harbor resentment. The second plan. Understand the weaknesses and attack patterns of undead creatures and survive their attacks. Linoa thinks this plan is better. It is more covert than the first plan and will not attract unnecessary attention. With a conclusion in his heart, Linoa immediately silently recited. Activate deconstruction, deconstruct this undead creature, and find its weakness for me. System message. You are about to launch a deconstruction spell on the big skull. It is expected that for every 1 point of energy consumed, the completion of deconstruction will increase by 25%. You currently have 10 points of energy. Are you sure you want to deconstruct? Most of the existing energy levels naturally recover over time. As long as you pay about half of the inventory, you can exchange all the intelligence of the big skull. Linoa looked at the bright purple light in the eyes of the big skeleton, without hesitation. Confirm to consume 4 points of energy and deconstruct with a 100% completion rate.